here this evening. Sustainable Merton, as your local environmental charity, is very pleased to work with Friends of the Earth on these important issues and to support their campaigning and lobbying. At Sustainable Merton, we very much focus on the doing part of climate change. What do I mean by that? Well, our primary objective is to involve people in climate change activity through projects that encourage them to get involved to improve the environment, to improve their well-being, and to change their behaviour for the long term. Our work is in four main areas: waste, energy, air quality, and food. And with the food, I'm going to ask each of them in turn to speak for no more than 3 minutes to give us an overview of their party's policies on climate change, biodiversity, and the environment. So we're going to do it in alphabetical order by their surname, not by party. So let's kick off with that. So on my right here, Anthony, over to you, and for the big Dems. Welcome.
Thank you, everybody. I didn't hear me, of course, the thing that happened first was that my mic fell. But thank you to everybody for coming tonight. And it's a really important event. I'm really pleased to be here on behalf of the Democrat candidates. So there are two big stories in politics: continuity and change. Now in Merton, we've had the same administration essentially in power since 1990. So if you want the council to do things differently, you're probably not going to get it from the existing administration. So I'm going to tell you about the kind of change that we as the Democrats want. In broad terms, we want an open, competent and caring council. Open in it's clear about its reasons for action, admits and learns from its mistakes, and listens to what residents say. Competent in that it can get streets swept and bins collected, isn't taken for a fool by its commercially savvy contractors, and is strategic and looks to the future, and most importantly, looks to be sensitive and brings people along with its decisions. And caring in that it supports schools and social care services, treats people as individuals, provides support for renters, works to combat the cost of living crisis, and takes action on the climate emergency. Now, I don't need to tell anybody here that the climate emergency is a global existential crisis. A year or two ago, we've seen that the world had come to a consensus on taking climate change seriously. Rising temperatures and pollution were not just an environmental issue, but an economic one and a security issue. But with Brexit, Trump, COP26, COVID, Ukraine, these events have made taking effective action more difficult. And things have been pushed back, the agenda has been pushed back. So in the LTA's 2021 climate change report, they found that over 55% of Londoners say that day-to-day life has been impacted by the changing climate. But on the positive side of the scale, the natural environment has become more important to people, and around 89% of Londoners are at least somewhat motivated to take action to tackle climate change. And we've seen that local communities and organisations work better together when they're given the freedom without any prescription. Mutual aid groups, which I was involved in, organise effectively to meet the needs of their local communities, neighbours helping neighbours. So our climate emergency and biodiversity priorities are focus on the climate emergency, a strategic approach to targets, taking action to ensure air quality, making our areas safer, cleaner, nicer place to walk and cycle, including bringing public transport, not cutting timetables, making our stations more accessible, electric vehicle charging infrastructure, and low carbon development, including batteries. I'm actually really looking forward to the debate and answering the questions. And I think it's an opportunity to learn a bit more. One of the things I want for myself personally is to learn more what you feel and how you think the council and the neighbours can do more. So thank you again for coming. I think my time is up. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Perfect timing, thank you. Right, let's turn to Edward next.
Or do I need a microphone? Let's start. There we go. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming tonight. Merton's Climate Strategy and Action Plan was adopted by the Council in November 2020 with cross-party support. The plan aims to make the Borough of Merton carbon neutral by 2050, with ambitions for the Council to become a carbon neutral organisation by 2030. The goals are ambitious, and of the 8 work streams, 3 are rated in red on the traffic light system. The first of these, sustainable consumption, a low carbon economy, will require people to change their personal consumption. This will take time and a lot of persuasion. The other 2 require money, lots of it, and on a scale that we can't possibly find from council resources. The first I mentioned is a retrofitted building stock to decarbonise energy usage. 81% of greenhouse gas emissions in Merton come from buildings. We have 88,000 homes in the borough, and 98% of them are heated by gas. Replacing gas boilers with ground or air source heat pumps will cost an estimated 2.7 billion. So while the new local plan will require all new developments to be zero carbon from 2025, it will take a long time and a considerable amount of money to decarbonise the existing housing stock. The second rated work stream is the council's own stated vehicle fleet. Merton has moved to 100% renewable tariff, but the cost of electrifying the vehicle fleet and installing the necessary charging infrastructure will require external funding. We think, and in fact we did try for this last year, that a dedicated officer needs to be appointed for whom submitting grants is his main day job. It's important that Merton succeeds in winning as much government funding, otherwise our ambitions within the borough will move out of our reach. Merton Park Independents have promoted biodiversity in our ward. We regularly speak to residents at our monthly meetings, and only last month we invited Sustainable Merton, and our guest speaker was Diana. She gave an excellent presentation to residents and took questions from the floor afterwards. We encouraged and supported the planting of daffodils on the verges of some of the roads within our ward, and they were spectacular if you walk through Merton Park. We're soon coming to the time when we don't mow the verges. That also encourages important insect and wildlife. We're also trying to address environmental issues such as car handling outside our schools and have signage erected within the vicinity of those schools. And lastly, I'll round up as I nearly have my 3 minutes, speak too slowly. We would like to see Merton use a different weed killer than glyphosate and have supported previous attempts to use a different method. Other London boroughs such as Hammersmith and Fulham have stopped and are now using Fane Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Edward. Right, moving along to Daniel Golden for the Conservatives.
Thank you, Diana. Is the microphone working?
Yeah.
So good evening, Merton Friends of the Earth and Sustainable Merton. Welcome to Hillside, and you are here tonight. The local Conservatives believe in conserving and protecting the environment. We want Merton to be a great place to live that is green, clean and pleasant. We know that local residents regard and deeply value their local green spaces and parks, ever more so since COVID 2 years ago. As local Conservatives, we want not to just protect and enhance our local parks and our local green spaces, to help improve biodiversity and as places to help people to well-being. A practical example is the Gap Road Gardens Pocket Park, which was developed and led on by Conservative London councillors Ed, Una and Janice. And also the upcoming Wilden Hill project, which will plant new trees, bushes, shrubs and wildflower beds and new seats and new lights and a new place to be. That's been led on by people like myself and my colleagues from Local Conservatives are also concerned by the increase in flash flooding over recent years. Something I saw firsthand from all the work that I live just around the corner, and particularly down lower down if anybody has seen it. Local Conservative councillors such as David Dean and myself again have been actively working with Thames Water to sort out the drainage infrastructure in London and Rains Park to help make Merton more resilient to flooding as a result of climate change. This is something that we will continue to do and do further improvements over the next years, and especially we need more help from the council to help. As local Conservatives, we want to see many more trees planted, not just here in London but across all of Merton. Our councillors have already been doing some of this, and I'll mention Councillor Dean again because he's our biggest environmentalist, and he has single-handedly planted over 1,000 trees in the last 2 years. But we need a big increase in tree canopy cover, and we need that to help provide shade, to help bring down temperature, to help biodiversity, and to help reduce pollution. Oh, and we also like to brighten the borough. So you may have seen over the last few weeks, tens of thousands of daffodils have come up around Merton, all planted by local conservators, and some residents have gone along to help them. So we'll be doing even more again next year. Local conservators also like to support active travel, and as a council, we should make walking and cycling easier, focus on improving existing cycle lanes, making them and keep walking routes safer so people can feel more confident. And as an example of behaviour change, I walk over 10,000 steps every single day and have done for over 500 days in a row. So I challenge everybody else in Paris to do that. We also want cleaner travel. We were the first party in Merton that demanded and encouraged the rollout of EV charging points and also the new lamppost style ones. And along that, so they're beginning to appear. But we need many more. We also tried to bring in the idea of an e-bike hire scheme to help people who could cycle but need that extra help that was introduced by council. So, as local conservators, we believe that a greener, brighter, cleaner future is possible by doing practical, pragmatic solutions and making the best use of technology. Very conservative.
Thank you. Quickly moving on to Natasha.
If the lights aren't working, the doors is a bit switched a hole in it, and there's all these developing ones. I'm going to stand up and make that. Yeah. Can you hear me? All right? The actions we take locally will impact globally, and that today's policy change tomorrow's reality. So when I reflect on the sometimes overwhelming challenge ahead of us in tackling the climate emergency or managing our local environment, I find it essential to recognise just how far we have come. Because our community and our council have come a long way in acknowledging our impact on the environment and our responsibility to change our behaviour. Whether it's embracing green bins to take our recycling rate from 34% to 42%, so that we have the 8th highest recycling rate in London, or seeing the work of groups like Merton Streets, who are greening our borough neighbourhood one neighbourhood at a time. Merton is home to a community that understands the urgent need for climate action, and I recognise saying wider awareness and sense of duty in this room this evening. Since our cross-party declaration for climate emergency, we have begun the work on making our council net zero by 2030 and the wider borough by 2050. We have developed a cross-party strategy to decarbonise the council's pension fund, secured funding for an additional 250 electric vehicle charging points. We're working on wild ways to rewild our grass verges and trying methods of alternative methods of weed management. We've become a leading borough in the rollout of school streets, and in honour of Her Majesty's Platinum Jubilee this year, we are on track to plant a tree for every childbirth born in Merton. When taking action against the impact of human behaviour on our local environment, we have worked with partners such as Sustainable Merton to reduce contamination of on-street recycling, launched Fix My Street to make it easier to report issues, and in the past year we have issued £800,000 in fines for rubbish dumped on our streets. But we must continue to build on the ambitions of our community for a cleaner, more sustainable Merton. That's why our pledges include commitments to hold a consultation on the future of our waste services, to pilot a climate bond scheme to fund projects that address the climate emergency, to introduce an environmental impact assessment and new policies in the council, and to decarbonise the council's refuse fleet by 2025. Because together, we can rebuild a cleaner, more sustainable Merton. And together, we can create a Merton we are all proud to call home.
Thank you, Natasha. And then, Cooper, for the Green Party.
Hi. Okay, on behalf of Merton Green Party, heartfelt thanks to Merton Friends of Earth and Sustainable Merton for upholding the important tradition of the Hustings. Thank you to the church for the use of this space, and thank you to all of you for being interested enough to come out tonight. We hazard a guess that many, or even all of you, are here because you want action on climate breakdown and biodiversity crisis. We also think it likely that you welcomed the successful petitioning of the Council to declare a climate emergency back in 2019.
and that you recognise the hard work of the Climate Emergency Working Group and Climate Action Group. However, we suspect too that there is despair at the degradation of our local environment. Air, noise and water pollution, littering and fly tipping. A questionable performance from Veolia and a high level of waste incinerated. Tarmacked tree pits, caged trees, the removal of healthy and mature trees, insensitive mowing, pollarding and pruning, threats to our parks from proposed developments and bad licensing decisions, dubious regeneration and incongruous construction, and poorly maintained footways and cycleways, made worse by faulty lighting and signage. We know that a good number of you already give your time to pick, litter and report fly tips, maintain and improve our green spaces, grow, harvest and donate food, respond to planning and licensing applications, work on initiatives from air quality monitoring to active travel plans, and that you protest the inaction and hypocrisy of companies and politicians. We are really grateful for your work. Merton Green Party hopes to convince you that our perspective on what can be achieved locally is practical, creative and ambitious, and that you can trust us to shape policy and practice from within the Council. Crucially, we're committed to accelerating the transition to a net zero borough, as we believe that the current 2050 target flies in the face of the Code Red for Humanity issued by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change last year. In our manifesto are the ways in which we propose to confront the climate and ecological crisis, improving active travel and public transport infrastructure, reducing miles driven, insulating homes, greening the grid, increasing canopy cover, nurturing green spaces, sharing food and equipment and raising the recycling rate, ensuring that new developments are environmentally sustainable and harnessing the changes in our town centres to create community spaces fit for the future. Thank you for listening. I look forward to answering your questions.
Well, thank you. And what a range that we've covered there. I think we're in for an interesting debate, and we are moving now into question time. Now, we've already heard there was unanimous support by all the political parties in Merton for the Merton Climate Action Plan back in 2020, and the Council is also currently developing a strategy for a cleaner and greener borough as a result of their consultation with the community, which is now called Merton 2030, so that is under development. Before we ask our questions, just 3 simple requests to you. So we're only wanting to take questions that are about climate change, biodiversity and or the environment. Please do not engage in debates and arguments or monologues. Okay, so I will cut it off because obviously the more we can get through, the more interesting it's going to be for us. And finally, if you would like to say your name and the area of the borough that you live in, then I think that would really just help put the context there. So, I'm coming over to you. I don't know, can I just have a show of hands from people that would like to ask a question? 1, 2, 3, we've got quite a few. Yeah, okay, there must be about 10 there. Well, shall we start with you, Gabriel, as Friends of the Earth, and then I'll work my way through.
Thank you very much, Diana. Thank you, members of the panel, for an excellent series of introductions. I'm Gabriel Bartos. I'm one of the coordinators of Merton Friends of the Earth, and I live in Hillside. My question would be relating to the impact. Can everybody hear me?
Oh, okay, let's grab the mic then. So, yeah.
Yeah, my question relates to development projects. I think there's an old saying that the greenest building is an existing building. So my question would be, in terms of the various development projects, office space and so on, which involves the addition of small buildings, wouldn't it make much more sense to repurpose existing buildings? And what is your view on that?
Okay, lovely. Obviously, there's a lot of intensification on both housing and through the Wimbledon master plan, we obviously have intensification and height coming with the office development. So, who would like to go first? Otherwise, I'll just pick. Edward, you go first then.
Okay, no, great question. And I think if we don't go too far away, one of the most contentious issues lately, which I got rather than emails about, was the office building. We all know about opposite the station. It seems vast, and well, in fact, only last night I was at a talk for the John Innes Society, and Clive Richard, some of you will know his books, and was doing parts of Wimbledon, and opposite there was a pub which is now being demolished. Now, I remember that office block that they were talking and taking down, going up, and it doesn't seem that long ago. It does seem a waste that it can't be repurposed or have another floor added to it, perhaps. And I do think that things have changed with COVID as well. There are more people working from home, and to fill that office building with more people does seem ambitious, to say the least. But just coming back to the point, not off the wall, I think I would like to see things repurposed if, where it's possible and made greener. It can't be good to demolish that building from just, it just doesn't make sense. It's going to create an awful lot of pollution just from the dust, all those bricks coming down. It's, Wimbledon's still going to be busy. There's still going to be people going out of that station, and to be going in and out, but the school kids going past with the dust and pollution, it does seem crackers to me.
Good. Daniel, your board, I think?
Yes, there's so I think it was St George's House, the East Boston Station, and I'm firmly of the belief that we should try to repurpose buildings, reuse, repurpose as best as we can.
Not really big. I think that's just the
Okay, hopefully that's better. So St George's House East is the one talking about opposite the station. I propose that as a bill that the Conservatives, not just that one, but other buildings locally that want to go. We can have redevelopment, sensitive redevelopment, and repurpose a building. And I'll give you an example on Wimbledon Hill Road. A few years ago, an old office block wanted to be converted. The developers wanted to demolish it. There were lots of really busy community and really local community opposed it. And the local business community got very upset and managed to get thrown out of the planning committee. And when they came back, we listened to the local people, listened to the local conservatives, and we said, well, why don't you have a development that's good design, and keep it in the area, reuse the building, repurpose it, smart and tough, and then also make the plan okay. And we need more examples like that. So Wellington House, next to, just down the road here, when you walk past the way back to the station. We need more examples of that in the borough, not complete demolition.
Okay, thank you. I mean, there is the case of the cost of retrofitting versus repurposing. Natasha? Yeah. Let's pass it on.
I think it's a good question, and my answer would be it depends on the building and it depends on the site. Because I'm thinking of buildings, so I'm from the east of the borough, and I'm thinking of regeneration of the flats there. I don't want those to stay there any longer than they need to be, they need to be gone, so we can have proper decent homes for people that are sustainable for the future. So I think it depends on the location, it depends on the building. I do, I find it interesting to talk about repurposing buildings, because when happy we repurposed the hall and kept that there, and that's a local landmark, and it's now a thriving community hub and a lovely space. Again, we have to be careful when we look at these and we come up with land policies. It has to be site by site, building by building, case by case.
Okay. Any responses to that, John?
Thank you. Yes, great question. And one that's not, I think, not terribly easy to manage in plans. I think it's actually right that it depends on the building. It really St George's House used to actually work in that building. That's my office at the moment, and it doesn't seem to be anything wrong with it. But that said, what do we need for the future? And that's what we've got to look at when we're actually think the way the public tend to think about planning is you think about planning committee meetings and the sort of vote to get through it done. Actually, that's a real yes or no kind of answer. What you actually want is the planning officers who are negotiating with the developers to have the community's priorities in mind when they're negotiating the pre-application stage. So the developments that come forward are actually developments that the community supports, that meet our planning rules, and that can encompass some of this stuff. On building heights, we proposed study was a limitation in height in the town centre, because that was the one thing in the engagement that the community wanted. There are stresses, but you need to. It's a fundamental element of democracy that when people express an opinion, you take it into account, and that's the way you can kind of bring people along. And one of the things I want to come back to tonight, I think this whole agenda is about how we as a community, maybe the early adopters of some of this stuff, bring as a bulk of the population along with us to do the right thing. So I think that's some of the stuff that I want to know about.
Sorry, yeah, okay, so with St George's House East, I'd like to pick up on what Anthony was saying about building height, because I think that's one of our main concerns in the Green Party. We understand high-density building, whether it's housing or offices, can, in theory, be more energy efficient during the use phase. But that's usually cancelled out during the build phase, where more energy-intensive materials are needed to build the higher stories. And so it's not just demolition; it's about, yeah, even if you create a building which they said comes from renewable energy or whatever, as they will say, the actual process of demolition of building something so tall is. Well, it's huge emissions, it's not contributing to our strategy. But I also wanted to pick up on something that Natasha said about the housing, and I know that this is a really controversial area of regeneration. I know, Natasha, what you said, you're convinced that it needs to speed up because you want people to have good homes. I don't dispute that, I don't think anyone would. But I think that there is an argument that Clarion and previous bodies in charge of those buildings ran those buildings into the ground to justify regeneration. There's a long history there. I know it's difficult. I pass Ravensbury Road on the way to and from work, and I've seen those houses going from being lived in to having crawling outside of, to the windows coming out, and now today they're all gone. And it seems to me such a shame that retrofitting wasn't at some point identified as better. And our party, we really do wonder if these three big regeneration projects of Clarence, Hyde Park, Eastfields, Ravensbury are as green as Clarion would like us to think.
Okay, thank you, Pippa. I think we could talk about planning and sustainable building all evening, couldn't we? But I'd like to move us on, because I think linked to this is energy. Because there is an argument that the cost of retrofitting, we won't get warm homes or warm buildings as a result. So has anyone got a question around energy, the energy crisis, anything like that? I'll come to you in a minute, Tom, but I'll come to the person there, at the back there. Can you get the mic down there, Mariana? Thank you.
My name is Catherine Dickinson. I had a question about insulation, which obviously focused on. I personally think this is one of the most important aspects, because if we don't insulate, then how do we use less energy? And I read about a scheme in Italy where the government is funding, I think, a tax break, 110% of the cost of insulating every home and business that applies for a loan within a certain period. So I just wondered if anybody had any views on that. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I'll just add to that. We've heard that 83% of the borough's emissions come from buildings. I understand that heat pumps, air heat pumps, don't work efficiently unless you have really good insulation in the building. So let's go to the panel now. Nicola, do you want to start us off? Then we'll come down the way.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Catherine, for your question. The Green Party absolutely agree with you that insulation is a priority. And obviously there's been talk tonight of how we fund that. We don't have magic wands, but we do have some ideas, and they are in our manifesto. So we would work more with the various housing associations to insulate the existing stock where necessary. We saw in my Merton recently that Clarion will put funding towards 50 of the most inefficient buildings. This is out of 20,000 in England. We don't think that Merton's really got the best deal there, so we seek to influence that. We also have an idea about an environmental loan fund, which would issue loans rather than grants, so the money that's returned to the fund could be used to lend to new people. It's not an entirely new model, I'm sure various of you have heard similar schemes, and loans would be repaid using the savings on energy bills. Early repayment would be allowed, and it would need to be coupled with a training programme for people to learn the skills required for the jobs. Ideally, of course, this would be a national programme with lending at home interest rates and a long repayment period, but we genuinely think that we could pilot something like that within Merton. We also have an idea about a levy for failure of developers to meet affordable housing targets and using that to insulate. And the final one I'll mention is exploring the viability of a council-owned energy company. I know that that's very ambitious, but we think that's relevant to the issue of insulation and energy use generally.
You
covered
covered a lot there. Okay, Edward.
Thank you. Thanks, Catherine. As Pippa said, I think we'll all be in agreement that insulation is very apparent now that, well, most of us now received energy bills and anticipating increases in what it's going to cost us to heat our homes. And I think those that haven't taken steps already will almost certainly be looking at investing, and it is an investment on insulating their lofts, putting the panels behind radiators. Certainly, it's been spoken to in our residents' meetings, but we do support it with the older people. The new developers have got, obviously, targets to meet with the new housing, but it is the older houses where, even with insulation, ground and air source heat pumps are probably not the ideal solution. There's only so much you can do. But it needs to be encouraged, and it's getting that change of behaviour. And sadly, I would think it will be one of the consequences of these high energy prices. People will take to insulating their homes. It's a lot cheaper to insulate than it is to, well, within reason. So a bit of loft. There are certain things the average household can do that will certainly help, be it draft excluders and just general insulation. Everybody, the more we do, the better it gets. And I think we need to encourage that behaviour and point people in that direction.
Lovely, thank you. I mean, I think there is a new programme being launched in May called Sustainable Warmth. So I don't know if any of the candidates know about that. I don't know the detail there. Let's come on down, Daniel.
I'm not told about that one. Yes, energy prices again is quite a concern. I like the idea of providing loans to homes and businesses to retrofit for insulation. council to bring those down. But the idea of a council on energy company sounds quite appealing. I know we supposedly have the concept of the past. Another thing that can be done is more use of solar installation. Each year has been a scheme called Solar Together, not only people seem to sign up for it. So we need to have a big program of encouraging people to make use of available schemes to help bring down their own costs. Yeah, I think that's all. So,
Thank you, Natasha.
I think for me, this is where, and I don't know where to talk about local politics, but this is where national leadership would make the biggest impact on this country. Because this is the biggest challenge we face, but it's also the biggest opportunity we have, because it can solve two things. It can solve the climate crisis from our emissions, but it can also solve a skills crisis in the country, and it can also solve an employment crisis, so we can give people good quality skills they can use for the rest of their lives. So I would desperately love for some national leadership on this. I don't need to kick that over to them and say what's their problem. No. So what can we do locally? What's the art of possible for us here? So how can we kind of replicate that here? So one of our pledges is to publish a strategy on retrofitting locally. We can use our convening power with developers and with housing associations. We can talk about how we together retrofit properties. We can then make it easier to then lobby for funding when you're all around the table and together we come up with those ideas. So that's what we're going to do, is publish that strategy to retrofit as the scale as we can possibly. Now, if we get some backing behind that, which is what I could do for like Merton College, if we get those young people involved in that program, retrofitting across Merton, what that would do for this borough, it would be amazing. So it's a big opportunity and challenge, but it's something that I desperately want to get looking into.
Thank you.
Thank you. And really to add to that, I think it's the biggest issue we face to emerging conditions are, and it's also probably the one that the council has the smallest level of levers over, direct levers over. Which I think what I wanted to add here is, I think there's a real challenge to get people to take the action that would actually help them and would lower their bills, reduce their energy consumption. I think it's a real challenge if you are worried about money that's coming in. Bills are going up. I think if somebody says to you, you need to insulate your flat, I just don't think that's very realistic to expect large numbers of people to go, oh yes, we need to do this. That said, as well as it can be power with developers and national, the council also has information sharing ability, and that's what we should be looking at. We should be looking at the way the council communicates with people, the way it gets across these messages, and the action that people can take. Really quite simple action sometimes that people can take to kind of lower their energy use and vehicles. I think also we need to be alive to the barriers of some of these things. I think if you're here tonight, you're here as an environmental Hustings, you have a level of knowledge and a level of sophistication in this area that the vast bulk of the population doesn't have. And I think we can't underestimate how difficult some people will find some of this stuff. So that's the challenge that we have. And to come back on the energy company, Robin Hood Energy has not been a massive success, albeit it sounds quite a nice idea. I don't think we've yet seen an example of that.
So let's come back to the audience, because a few of you put your hands up. So have anyone got any, there's a few. Okay, Juliet, let's come to Juliet and Tom in the second row. Maybe we can just cluster some, please, so that we get on to other subjects.
Thank you. Interesting contributions from the panel. My question is about the inconsistency, because Merton Council declared climate emergency and there wasn't action. But across the road from me, Ricards Lodge School applied to have floodlighting 7 nights a week, quite late, and car parking, because they wanted to have a hockey club come, and it's going to be devastating for the wildlife in the woods around Rickards Lodge and for the local residents. And the council have given permission for this, and it seems to be inconsistent with declaring a climate emergency and the biodiversity issue. And I've been told that Wimbledon College had a similar application, and they've got loads of astroturf and floodlighting, and they've been given permission, and that's going to affect the drainage and the water as people below Wimbledon College are going to not only be affected by floodlighting, but also by the water coming that doesn't get absorbed because of all this astroturf.
Right, okay, thank you, Julia. And I mean, interestingly, I've heard from someone that operates a community facility with lots of playing fields. Their energy bill is forecasted to treble. I mean, it was a massive sum, so the affordability of doing that, I think, is something. I'm going to ask Tom his questions, and maybe we can double up, because I know we've got so many questions. So, sorry, Marianne, but is it related to that type of thing, Tom?
It's energy.
It is energy, yeah, let's do that then.
I'm not sure how many people can remember the last recession we had. It wasn't that long ago. It was quite dramatic. The Bank of England released £800 billion to prop up our banks. No one's batting an eyelid. We're not discussing propping up banks now, we're discussing propping up our country. We can't create a scheme that allows ordinary residents to borrow money at a reasonable rate to get all this work done. We won't solve our climate crisis. So we have to look at this in a new paradigm, and we have to, everyone here has to be open to a new way of thinking on this.
Okay, let's get another energy question, and then we'll take them all together. So, yeah, down on the right, Marianne, the gentleman there.
Chairman Golden Village. Just wanted to pick up on the Dasha's point. Why does the Chancellor not tax the big energy companies who are, and get a windfall tax from them, pass it on to the local councils, so they can create a loan fund themselves and fund the local residents to alleviate the massive energy costs that we are envisaging now and in the future. And remember, this is not going to go away. It has to be tackled at this point in time. Otherwise, it will only escalate and escalate.
Okay, thank you. So I think the message coming across there is obviously people need advice about insulation, and I agree with that, and even understanding your energy bill, and I know there is work starting to emerge on that. But also the whole thing about how you go about it and access to funding to help you do it. So I think that was both your question and the question there about finance from the paradigm that you mentioned. So let's start with Natasha, and then we'll sort of mix it up a bit. Is it gone? Oh, you've got to turn it on. That's no.
Hello.
That's it. Well done.
So the thing about inconsistency, I understand we do need to have quite a robust, solid policy. There's always going to be issues where it's a judgment call and we need to have guiding principles that make sure we take a consistent measure. However, I always struggle with this when we talk about issues, because we do have a climate crisis, we also have an obesity crisis, and I want to know how we balance these two things. There must be a way, there has to be a way for us to have nighttime playing on a hockey pitch that doesn't impact the environment in a negative way. So perhaps we need to be thinking how we can do this in a smarter way, and I don't have the answer to that right now, but I can see where the contention around is. On the last two questions, so the kind of the same area really, which is about funding and about the funding is always about priorities. So in my lifetime, this country had finished paying back its loan it took out to stop the slave trade. in my lifetime. So that means my taxes, as a woman of colour, have gone to pay back that debt. Now that's because this country decided we had enough of doing that. If we have a genuine crisis, a genuine emergency, this country can make that decision. And I don't want to laden everybody with debt in the future, but this is to save our humanity, to save our lives. So what costs our lives, what costs our environment? And the windfall tax, of course. We're not talking about taxing profits they're aware of, we're talking about taxing profits they didn't know they were going to get. And we have a real genuine crisis of people who cannot afford to eat or heat their homes in 2022. How is this happening? It's insane. So we should be making bold, big action. We've got big, bold problems.
So, Natasha, would you as the governing party at the moment like a windfall tax that came your way?
Yes.
Just checking. Okay.
It's not like
Daniel.
Thank you. In terms of the sports pitch, you mentioned Wimbledon College. That went to Family Committee last December. I went on behalf of local residents to impose it on the grounds that I mentioned. And I was roundly laughed at, as well as local residents, by the Labour councils on the committee. And that's something that people experience more times than not when they go to that committee. And then the same thing happened at Big House Lodge Hall. And we've got a school governor from Big House Lodge here tonight, not me, the guy sat next to me. So he can answer some of that. So it needs to be balanced in these things. I think people want reasonableness of hours and sort of more safe control about how people access the site. The problem is we all know they'll just all drive there. Whereas if it was at sensible hours, people then might use public transport or walk or cycle or something like that. So the schools need to be more reasonable when doing these things, and you've got to remember that they live in a community where all their residents need to be mindful of that. In terms of England policy and government policy, I'll pass that on to the national side, and I can't say what we're going to do on that subject. I can only say what we can do locally. So I'm not a kind of national policy. But I'll certainly pass on to our BBC in hand.
Thank you. Edward?
Well, as Dan said, I'm chair of governors at Big House Lodge, and I know a fair bit about the floodlights. It has been running, which you may know, for probably over 5 years, and there's probably, I could talk for a good half an hour on it, but there were numerous bat surveys, wildlife surveys that were commissioned by the developers. This was something I should say, it wasn't the school, this was Wimbledon Hockey Club that offered to renew the pitch and put floodlights in for the benefit of the school if they could have it after hours, which the pitch is hard out after hours already. But obviously it only really makes any money in the summer. And this was certainly used in the winter. The deal, and that pitch is also used by Bishop Gilpin during the week. The deal with the Wimbledon Hockey Club has, and they have, I think it's 11 or 12 Olympians there at the moment. There is a huge amount of coaching facilities that goes into the young people there to help their physical and mental health, obviously, and the benefits that sport give. One thing I will say about the floodlights, and I have some knowledge with a rugby playing, coaching, refereeing background, and they are incredibly expensive to run, or were. And that's about 20 years ago when I was involved with a grant in getting some installed at the rugby club. Now, what I do know with the floodlights, although the school isn't paying for them, the floodlights that are going in, only in the last week was this planning permission, and so it's going ahead. What isn't common knowledge is the floodlights now they're a different floodlight in terms of lower energy, they're far more efficient. They won't throw as much light spill, light pollution, which the ones that went into planning will. And that's purely through innovation which is a bonus for everybody. But ideally, in a perfect world, of course, we don't want light pollution. But unfortunately, it's gone through planning, and it's a very complicated story. But it wasn't taken lightly. It's at least 5 years that it's been running. And if it hadn't happened, well, the school would have continued until that pitch became unusable. It wasn't part of the original PFI grant. It was actually built with a lottery-funded grant. So unfortunately, the upkeep of it has never happened. It's just been too costly to manage, really, and it's fallen into disrepair. So it is a good facility for the community. There is a cost with light pollution. The back surveys that were commissioned, I think the ones that the residents did weren't, and certainly there are some backs there, but not the amount that was perhaps indicated, certainly. And hopefully they will, there is a plan to help them put something down.
Okay, thank you. Peter?
I'm going to pick up on a wider point that Juliet's made of hypocrisy. Your inconsistency is the word that she used in particular. Because it's unfortunately been a marker of how things have gone generally for the council when it comes to planning applications and what they allow to get through to the stage where it's at the hearing, that it even gets considered in the first place. I was part of the Climate Emergency Working Group, who, in the wake of the successful petitioning of the council to declare climate emergency, were working with other residents and a handful of councillors to try to come up with this kind of strategy and action plan. And I think that I was not the only person who was, on the one hand, feeling glad to be collaborating with the council, feeling like this was quite innovative, but also were watching plans being approved, which, to use my words from the introduction, fly in the face of the Code Red for humanity. And it made me, others, very uncomfortable, and it continues to, and it became difficult to justify what we were doing in a way. Some of us became worried about being seen as complicit with the council because of this inconsistency. And when I presented to the Cabinet the Climate Strategy and Action Plan as produced by the Climate Emergency Working Group, one of the observations that was made by Peter Southgate, independent councillor in particular, was how, or not an observation, a recommendation, was that just as an equality impact assessment is now taken as read for every process when you're looking at introducing a new policy, we need a climate impact assessment as well for every single plan, so that this stuff doesn't get through. Because it keeps on getting through. And all of the people, stakeholders, House East came up earlier. That's one of the latest examples. There is a raft out there of the kinds of things that Juliet is talking about, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just going to say, because as someone who sits on the planning committee or on the scrutiny committee for planning, I think climate impact assessments are done. Natasha, yes. Let's pass it. I don't know the detail.
No, I was referencing, as I mentioned in my intro, that one of our measures is an environment impact assessment on all new policy, not just on planning, because obviously climate emergency touches every part of the council, not just planning, whether you're thinking about issues in schools, or you're thinking about trees, or you're thinking about whether or not someone can tarmac over their front garden. Either way, you need to have that kind of view. I've taken too much lessons.
Over to Anthony. Yeah.
Thank you, and thank you for the 3 questions. And to come back on the sort of environmental impact assessment, actually the council did pass a motion in 2014, to have what it calls there a one planet kind of assessment that you really have on the planet, and we don't need to use resources of more, we can't use resources of more planet. Unfortunately, nothing ever came of that. That was proposed by a Liberal Democrat councillor at the time, and nothing happened. to do it, we've had discussions about that as well. So things do take a while longer than I hope, but we think that gets up on some of it. To come back on the schools, I think there's a sort of circularity here. The reason the schools are doing this is because school funding is such a massive issue, and it needs national action and national leadership, which of course is exactly the same point as we have around energy and retrofitting. Again, you might raise that with Stephen Ham's already there. Thank you very much. In terms of the paradigm, Tom, I think you're exactly right. I think we've got the biggest example of that with the response to the COVID crisis. We did things that didn't meet economic orthodoxy, and the world hasn't crashed down. I think that's a lesson to absorb. I think you're right. I think it's a good lesson to absorb here, and a good lesson to our leaders in Westminster and internationally as well, that things can be done when the will is there, which I think is probably sums up those questions.
Lovely, thank you. Right, so there's some topics we haven't covered. So anyone else got anything that relates to biodiversity? Gentleman right at the back. So we've got the gentleman at the back, and is it a gentleman or a lady? Oh, it's Linda. I can't see that far, Linda. I'm so sorry. I need my other glasses on. I'm so sorry.
I'm happy to be in back. Thank you. Yes, it's lovely to hear all the candidates very keen to plant trees and so on, but it's really important that we look after our existing biodiversity. It takes a long time, and we're not looking after them well enough. The street trees are being sprayed with glyphosates every year, and there are all sorts of places like in Woodland Park Golf Club where there are proposals to uproot existing trees. The playgrounds, for example, the playing fields we're talking about, what you haven't mentioned is you're talking about plastic grass. So biodiversity does not thrive on plastic grass, nor do children's needs actually. So I'm wondering, what do your candidates think about pesticides and herbicides in particular? The London Assembly agreed unanimously in 2019 to work to ban pesticides across London. This is up to us in Merton to do it in our borough, but there's still pesticides being sprayed routinely in our streets, in many of our parks, and there's no indication of any way of dissuading people from spraying them in their gardens or on the railway lines. So I'd love to hear what you have to say about that.
Thank you, Linda. Let's take this lady in the row 2, Marianne, here, because that's the biodiversity one. Because I'm just conscious we've got like 15 minutes left, so I'm just trying to get as many questions in as we can.
Hello, I'm Caroline, and I'm a member of Friends of the Earth, and I live in Northern. And my questions were very much linked up with Linda. I mean, half of my questions were Linda's question. So I would just ask the period, which was, how do you plan to support doubling tree cover in our area? Okay, short and sweet.
Lovely. So we don't want to kill off with pesticides, and we want to grow. So over to the panel. Right, Daniel, let's come to you first. Try and mix it up a bit.
It is now. Yes, so pesticides and phosphates, glyphosates, I know it's been a topical issue, and I do know it's been coming down in usage. I also understand it's due to be banned in the UK within the next few years, as my understanding. So we should really wind down its use more quickly on alternatives. It's not, we need to wind up pretty quickly. So yeah, we should wind down to stop using it and find some quick solutions in the meantime. As for planting trees, I think that sort of planting tree adoption scheme will work quite well. Encourage people, if they want to have their own tree, we should give them one and how to look after it. We should also assist in planning criteria and people seek applications. We need to protect more trees. We also should insist that all trees are planted by developers rather than just tarmac over everything all the time. this year, previous week, and it's been a great chance to get more trees, and I think she'll agree with that, and she'll try to find ways to plant them. Missing parts of the crystal, so empty tree bits, which really plant more trees and we should have that.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to add in your point while we're waiting, Nick? Is that what you want to do? Oh, a second question. Okay, come to you later then. So, it does intrigue me that, green space is good for well-being, and yet when you see new developments, particularly flats, they have nothing. How does that work? It's the same sort of question. How does all this work? Who knows the answers? Any volunteers? Go on, Anthony. I always think that.
I'm not sure I'm going to promise you the answer. I'm certainly not going to promise you a rose garden. It's ongoing. Linda, your question about pesticides. Definitely we need to work to reducing the use of them and hopefully ultimately getting rid of them at all. I think we could start by making sure they're actually used how they're supposed to be used. The council's contractors are only supposed to use them on hard surfaces and with some other restrictions as well, and reducing them in parks. So it is a case of cracking down on contractors and making sure that the contractor in the short term is doing it. The challenge is going to be cost, and I suspect that's the issue that I'm going to take too many words from Natasha if that's what she's going to talk about. Wimbledon Park Golf Club and the AELTC expansion, there's a real issue there with the loss of 300 mature trees and 10 kilometres of road potentially going into that site. There's some real environmental concerns about that planning application that we desperately need to look at. But as I mentioned before, planning is a sort of yes/no binary decision. The challenge is getting the right application, not rejecting or approving the application if you can't. Although obviously what we've seen so far looks pretty horrendous on an environmental point of view. I think there's a real interesting point about the right biodiversity. It's all well and good to plant various things, but actually the right species need to be in the right places and they need to be maintained and looked after. So it isn't just about planting the trees or the daffodils, it's about, are these the right things in the right places? And the best thing for me about planting daffodils is actually getting a group involved, actually bringing the neighbours together, not necessarily planting itself, although they're both important aspects. A particular aspect for me is tree works, and when you get a developer or an owner of property who cuts down a tree, it's actually very difficult to get the council's tree protection officers involved. There's no obvious phone number, there's no obvious way to report it. There's no register of TPOs that's accessible that somebody can check, or the tree surgeon can check, can I do this work? These are things I've been in the last few months talking to the Director of Environment about. And I know there are some moves in the future along those lines. But again, it's the information. If we have the information, we could make a difference there. The tree colour, which I don't want to very quickly, don't take too much time. It was quite surprising to us that the Climate Emergency Action Plan didn't have a tree strategy within it when it was released. There is a tree strategy coming forward now. That's certainly part of it. But it's not just public land, is it? We need to look at how we encourage private land to increase trees as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure Natasha wants to respond to some of those points.
Where I would start is to thank Merton Friends for meeting with me on two separate occasions to express the crisis we have with biodiversity. Because I have to admit I was completely ignorant, really. You cut grass, you want it to look nice, and you move on with your life. But actually, you suddenly realise that we've lost, it's half of the species since World War II, and it's insane with what we're doing to our planet just by over managing grasslands, which to me is sitting in this chair as the person who's cabinet member for the local environment. It makes complete sense to then just stop cutting the grass so much. What the issue we have
is making sure that we communicate with our residents that this hasn't been forgotten about. This is part of the bigger plan. There's an education piece that actually everybody in this group can help with, because we need people to understand we're not just missing out their patch of land, but we're doing this for a purpose. So wildways is something that we're rolling out in some areas of the borough. We get some signage up, we get some communication. We use that branding because it happened in Kingston. We hope that there is some residual information out there that people understand what we're trying to achieve with wildways. In terms of glyphosate, we have reduced the amount we use. In part, it's only supposed to be used for things like knotweed. What I would ask officers and Hamilton to do is to create a register, so every time it issues, they're thinking about why it's being used and what it's for. Ultimately, the licence is coming up for renewal. It's for the EA to decide whether or not this country continues to have this. Now, we can have a biodiversity strategy in Merton. It is something we should look at. But biodiversity does not talk about our ward boundaries. It's going to be a national thing. Again, it's about national leadership. If we don't want to utilise space as a nation, then we need national leadership to help us pay for the alternatives that are there. We need to pay for them, whether that's manual extraction, electrodes that the GLA are using, foam or steam. These things need more regular applications. We can also look at things like bee-friendly streets, so we've got a Waltham Forest where residents come out and take over the weeding themselves, or they let some of the weeds grow to encourage bees and to encourage other pollinators to do that. So there's a range of things that we're already looking at. I'm really excited by it, but my ask is please bear with us, because we're on doing generations of thought about how you manage green spaces, and I think it's going to take everybody in the industry to help us communicate what's comes next with this. Oh, and on the tree strategy, it's coming. The first phase is all about public trees. We have to, as a first responsibility, to look after the trees the council owns. The second phase will be about private trees and trees on private land and how we manage that. So I'll leave it now.
Just go down the line, please. So, Edward?
Thanks. Linda, as everyone said, great question. I've mentioned it in my speech about glyphosate. I think other boroughs are beginning to lead the way now. Hackney, Hampshire, Fulham, as Anthony commented, I think short term we've got to get them to use it in the right places, not in the parks, not on hard surfaces, if it's got to be used at all. I think it will come down, as has been mentioned, to money, but we need to make changes. Money's one thing, but it's the damage. There's a cost, not in the purse, but there's a cost to us and the environment, and that is got to be overriding. So I think we do need to move towards losing that in this borough. And actually, lastly, you mentioned about the artificial pitches. I'm not a lover of them. I have played rugby on them, and I wouldn't want to see any more. They do hurt when you go down, and you end up not with muddy knees, but you end up with friction burns. And yeah, I wouldn't like it. So no more of those. I'm not a lover of those. Now, Carol, the tree colour. Of course, we've got a lot more trees. And it's something that I think in my lifetime I've experienced the Dutch elm disease. Only in small units. Opposite my house, I had a horse chestnut tree in the neighbour's garden that I know was well over 240, 250 years old. It went down with a hell of a thud in the school. And it's affected a lot of people in the road actually, because it was a bit of a landmark. And you think, well, it was there before even some of these other houses in Merton Park. And it's nice to see people talking about that, but then you realise how long it's taken to get to that shape and size. No matter how many trees you've got, these are going to take a very long time to grow. And sadly, we should have been doing this a long time ago. We're never going to see these trees that we plant today. It probably, our great-grandchildren will get the benefit of them. So we've got to keep up the momentum, and sadly, I think there's been too much of a gap. And just going Common Richmond Park, you look at some of the old oak trees. I mean, they're magnificent, but they really are. They're hundreds of years old. They're getting to the end now, and you think, well, what's been done? They're great trees, but there's a big gap between those old trees and we want to be and we've got to try and fill that gap as best as we can for future generations. So, anything that we encourage more tree growth.
Lovely. Pippa?
Thanks. It's interesting, Anthony, you say about the tree strategy not getting through the climate strategy and action plan, because I was in the Green Spaces subgroup of the Climate Emergency Working Group, and in December 2019, it was one of the recommendations that we made to have a tree strategy. So here we are, a third of the way through 2022. Yes, we had a pandemic, but we're only in the beginning stages of consultation. We, as a party, think that the tree strategy, as long as it's meaningful, and as long as it's updated regularly as progress is made, and as long as it's tied to our carbon reduction targets, we think that it should provide the framework that we need to double canopy coverage or indeed more. But I wanted to mention in particular that we want to increase canopy coverage so that tree planting happens substantially beyond the replacement of losses that are due to damage, to storm damage and disease and decay. We've also mentioned the improvement management of street trees. And nobody's actually mentioned biodiversity in this, in our contract for the green spaces management in Merton. And I think that really the contract with biodiversity needs to be looked at, needs to be reviewed to see what they're thinking about trees, because unfortunately we see some poor practice from them. I also wanted to say about developers. The Green Party would want it to be the case so that every developer, and sorry, this isn't a memory test, applicants would provide precise and auditable details of trees and shrubs that are more than a certain girth that are going to be impacted by a proposed development, and we want them to say what the impact is of their development on canopy cover and maintain it, if not increase it. Final thing I'm going to say is I'm taking a lot of time, it's about biodiversity. Green Party absolutely against glyphosate. It's the health of us, it's the health of the wildlife. People are talking a lot about cost here. The Green Party don't really have a Green Council, we're not privy to the kind of information that my fellow panelists here are. So it's difficult to comment on that. But we have in our manifesto a raft of measures to address biodiversity, and I don't think there's any point in listing them because I think a lot of them have already been mentioned. But I encourage you to look at our manifesto.
Thank you. Now, we are meant to be wrapping up, and I'm meant to be inviting each person to do their 1 minute sum up. There are a lot of questions that haven't been asked, so what I'm going to do is take 3 more questions and ask each of the people to just answer. You don't have to answer them all, just choose what you want to answer when you're wrapping up, because I think, so Luke's got his hand up, the gentleman in front of him. Yeah, that's fine, go first, yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to pick up on a reference that Anthony said last week, just a few moments ago, to the development proposals for the Wimbledon Park. These are the proposals by the All England Club to put up an 8,000-seater stadium and to carpet the whole area with 39, I think it is, tennis courts. And these proposals seem to me to represent one of the biggest, if not the biggest, current threat to the environment and to green spaces in the borough. And I'd like to hear from each of the candidates what they have to say about those proposals.
Thank you. And we'll go to Luke. I don't think we'll be able to cover all of that, I'm afraid. I know it's a massive and very contentious area. I'm sure they'll touch on it in their summing up. Luke.
Thanks. Luke McCarthy, Merton Park resident, chair of Merton Residents Transport Group, and also a transport lead for the Climate Action Group. I think that's all of my intros. We've heard a lot at the beginning of the session about the sort of 80-odd% of emissions that come from buildings and energy. Broadly, the other 20% comes from transport. Cars, buses, HGVs, etc. I'd be interested to hear all of the panelists' views on what their party would do around 2 things. Firstly, increasing walking and cycling in the borough, and the flip side of that is, in practice, there needs to be nationally about a 25% reduction in use of cars for journeys. So again, I guess the flip side is increasing walking and cycling, but also a reduction in car use. And I guess particularly for Natasha and Daniel, there have been some reasonably high-profile members of your parties who have been quite anti some of the measures that the council have put in around walking and cycling infrastructure, and I'd just be interested in your views, particularly about what you're intending to do to bring those members of your own parties along the journey.
Okay, thank you. Okay, right. I'm going to now turn to each of them. We'll just come down the line. We'll start with you, Pippa. So if you could sum up, maybe include a little bit of a response to those two questions in your sum up, and maybe if you could include a pledge to your party for Merton Borough as well, that would be brilliant. And you've got a minute each, and Gabriel is timing you.
I'm not going to try to sell our policies, I'm just going to reiterate people to look at our manifesto on our website, please. I want to address Luke's point first of all. Well, it's going to sound quite basic, but it's heartfelt. We would work systematically to improve footways, cycleways, crossings, signage, lighting in order to create a more coherent, safer walking and cycling network so that people can make their journeys to work, school, to shops, to leisure, in active travel. Using active travel. We also, in particular, like to install more facilities to allow people to store their bicycles securely, safely. Where possible, we'd like that to be for free. We would also like to try to make people feel safer walking and cycling. So there's a programme called Vision Zero, and at the moment it's a London-wide programme, and the target is 2041. To reduce injuries to and deaths of pedestrians and cyclists. We'd really like to lobby to bring that forward to 2030. In terms, Luke, of what you're saying about the reduction of cars, we have an idea about smart road pricing. I fear that I'm going to run out of time.
I think you are.
Right with it. So all I'm now going to say is that with the ALTC, please again find our objection which we submitted, and you'll see what we have to say.
Thank you, Pippa.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, rather than the part I missed out of the speech was actually about active travel, encouraging cycling and walking, and I was talking to Pippa earlier this evening just about the importance of somewhere secure to put your bike. I think it's one thing we have to make people change their behaviour and try and cycle where they can. But it's never if all cycle rats are tucked on the corner out of sight. As we know, cycle theft is absolutely rampant within the borough, and it needs to be free. If you're going to make people cycle, it's got to be somewhere that can be seen, and there has to be a camera. The police need to take more interest in bike and get stolen. Because it's, I know so many people that buy Morrisons that have had a bike stolen, and I'm sure people here do, and in broad daylight they've tucked it in there, in their alleyway, and you know, bikes are getting more expensive, even second-hand ones, and they need to be, but it's the biggest deterrent, I think. You get on a bike, you get the confidence, you cycle from A to B, to come out of the shop and find that your bike's gone. Absolutely crazy. So I think we must encourage proper bike parking facilities where the bikes are secure and watched, and more effort needs to be made on that. And as we're running out of time, regarding Northern Park, well, there's so much that's been said. It's a shocker, really. I think if one could turn the clock back, that land was sold at one price, with a covenant that said it couldn't be built on. And as we know, things have changed. It's too easy now, it's worth too much money to them, so they think they can just put this up. And I'm not in favour of it. I like tennis, but not that.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you. And so something I'd like to say, we want more trees, and as a local consensus, we plant more and put people to plant more. We also seek to, by example, try and encourage people to walk and cycle more. As Chloe's making points about theft of bicycles. That's one of the reasons I don't cycle as much. So we need to get the police to actually practically help tackle theft of bicycles. We need better street lights and better pavements. Then with action like walking 10,000 steps every single day, as I've done for over 500 days, if all of us did that, that will make a big difference. And I've not owned a car for 14 years, which I think is quite a go. In terms of other things, we've been strong anti-idling enforcement. I brought that into the borough. We need to actually get the enforcement carry on and be improved. So it's idling vehicles always bad for pollution. So we need to, as for the All England, as you mentioned, that we need very strong enforcement of the covenant now. We really need to make All England go back on some of their plans to be more reasonable to the community and finally on the safe side sort of shit.
Okay, so I will start on the All England. I think everyone can agree that it's a privilege to have such a prestigious tournament in our borough. However, we would like them to be a good neighbour. I'd love to see that parkland become public. That's great, but I think we all have concerns over building on that land and having a road that is closed off and our residents can't access their homes during the tournament. And I think as the application goes through, those things will be discussed at the next. But I would like to see more parkland in the borough. In terms of your question around walking and cycling, I'm actually quite proud of some of the stuff we've done around transport. We've got a lot of low traffic neighbourhoods in this borough already, because historically we had them before they were the new thing. And so I think the lesson we can learn from low traffic neighbourhoods though is we have to do these things with people, not to them. I don't ever want to be in a situation where we have cyclists versus car owners, because it doesn't help any of us. So, and I think on having to sum up, our way forward is to build on the things we've already done, but do that with the community, with things around biodiversity, explaining why we're having to take these actions and bringing everyone together to tackle the climate emergency.
Thank you. And Anthony.
Thank you, and I'll try and answer the questions and start at the same time. On the AELTC, there is a covenant on the use of the land. We wanted the council to commit to enforcing that covenant. It would be a pretty good negotiating tool, actually, if you were trying to force the Ordinary Tennis Club to do what we wanted. Sadly, the council would not do that, and even the Conservatives didn't support that either, which was a shame, to say the least. Hopefully, both of you know. No, okay,
we're wrapping up. We've done so well so far.
On sustainable transport, we think, I think a lot of the stuff I just heard from Natasha sounds great. It's exactly what I want to hear. We need to bring the community along with us. Interventions shouldn't pit one group of the community against one another. We aren't actually seeing that. We had a range of proposals over the last couple of years that were actually put up to, yes/no consultation, which unsurprisingly did nothing happening at all. We desperately need to bring people along with us, and part of that is looking at what we're trying to achieve and looking at the evidence and measuring some of this stuff. So if it's an air quality measure, we need to be taking air quality measurements, we need to be trialling the intervention, and then we need to be looking to see whether it's worked and what the incidental kind of effects are, and then changing the proposals accordingly, which we have powers to do. So I think that's what we need to do. We also need to look at the fact that our transport companies are cutting their schedules. So South Western Railways tend to think a lot of our stations are not accessible. We need to look at some of these positive measures. And then we also need to think about the fact that most of our town centres in the borough are actually based around traffic. If you want people to meet the London target, half of journeys to be on foot or by cycle by 2030, then we need to make these areas nicer places to walk, nicer places to cycle. And I don't really see that. And in fact, unfortunately, one of the parties on this panel's entire election campaign is based around motor car. You may have seen leaflets from the Conservative Party. It's all about that. And I'm sorry, we need consensus here, and setting one part of the community against another just isn't going to help matters. And so I asked that, and maybe that's see it happen again, and all your local leaders to think about when you're next putting together a local election manifesto. But generally, something that's very important, we want to look at the evidence to support the decisions and won't be afraid to change our minds if and when we get it wrong. Right.
Thank you. Now, our time is up. I'm going to pass over to Marianne, she's here, but I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you from me for you asking. We've rattled through a huge amount of questions and a brilliant audience, thank you, and also to the candidates. Over to Marianne.
Sustainable Merton for partnering with us. It has been an incredible evening. Thank you so much to our audience, to the members of our group for coming and contributing, and to the panel members, obviously, for being here. We would love to continue communicating with you all. If you are tweeting tonight, if you could please either tag us or hashtag take climate action, it will be amazing. And thank you again. Have a great evening.